Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I am her loyal sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
And as you can see, we're sharing the space together this evening. There are guests here that we are accommodating, and it's like old times, right? A year ago, we had to do this on a regular basis, and it works. We make it work. So, this evening, before we get to our topic, I guess we have to do a YouTube spiel.
Why don't we do a YouTube video?
So, thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're here live, we have an unexpected amount of friends here, given it's the Easter weekend. And that's lovely. I'm glad we get to spend this time together. And if you're watching on the replay, welcome to you as well. And lots of holidays coming up. It's still Ramadan right now. We have Passover, we have Easter, all kinds of stuff going on. Happy holidays to all of you who celebrate.
Yeah, it's also National Crayon Day.
It's also, what is it, Remembrance Day? Transgender Remembrance Day?
A day of something or other.
Yeah. So
Visibility.
Visibility
That's
Day.
it,
That's the
yes.
one. There's two different ones. Visibility Day.
It's
Yeah.
also Cesar Chavez Day. And it is Farm Workers Day.
There you go.
And it's several other days as well, all rolled into one. But Easter only happens on this day once
like
every
escape
18 years or something like that.
early.
It's also April Fool's Day in India.
Ah, and we're making all of this up, so April Fool. No, seriously, it is all of these days.
So we have, of course, our YouTube spiel where we invite you, if you so desire, because it really benefits us, to like, comment, subscribe to our channel, and to engage with us, with our community. You can find us on Facebook. You can email us if you want to get in touch. Still offering one-on-ones to people who might be interested in having some coaching and counseling support on your journey to awakening, in the work, that kind of thing.
Journey to Awakening?
No, gross.
Yeah. Yeah, we're selling bus tickets to the Journey to Awakening.
Go further, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's just cut to the chase. What are we talking about this evening, Mushtaq?
So there is the concept, and the title tonight is If Thine Eye Be Single. That is I, as opposed to I.
Eyeball.
Yeah. Though it's a play on Matthew 6:22 and 23, for those of you who want to look up a biblical reference, because it's an interesting thought. If your eye be single, your body shall be illuminated. And in this case, we're talking about the idea that human beings are not single. They are many. They are a multitude. They are legion. That's also a biblical reference. Yeah, for those who want to know what the hell I'm talking about, look up the story of the Gabardine swine. But I figured it's Easter, I should pull out the Christian references just to show everybody that I read the Bible once. You have to put up. It's so bad. So there's this thought that we are not one, we are many. Gurdjieff talked about it in his work, and he went on at length about it from time to time. He demonstrated, actually. Emma's here. How does this manifest? It basically means that when you are running your stimulus response meat machine, what you call you will change from moment to moment. The I that was present an hour ago may not be the I that is present right now. And given different stimulus, you will get different I's. Is this a reality? Probably not. It's a model. It's a way of talking about it. It seems as a lot like it, though.
It can feel like it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And in extreme cases, it manifests like it. If anybody, what do they call multiple personalities now?
I think it's DID, but I think that's dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah, something like that. People who have more than one I and those I's don't know each other. That's everybody. And we talked about this some last week.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking about this week, to take it a step further away from just the core habits into everyday experience. Back when I was working in the neuropsych unit, I got a chance to hang out with a few multiple personalities, which is interesting because they're fairly rare. But I had a chance to spend some time with some of them, and one of them described to me the moment that they became a multiple. They said it was like all of these parts of me were all here, and they were all hooked together through a central axis. Then one day somebody came by and pulled out the axis, and they all went, which I thought was brilliant.
That's quite an illustration.
Yeah. And for her, it was a matter of catching each of those personalities, for lack of a better term, and hooking them back together.
Was not something that she desired to do?
Yeah. Being a multiple is not necessarily a fun thing. I know one person who most of the time enjoyed it. When she was feeling overstressed, this one personality that would come out that was sort of a 10-year-old boy who liked to play. And when she was in that persona, she just had fun. And she made the adults play with her. Now people are going, yeah, it might have all been just an act. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't an act, for reasons that I don't need to go into right now, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't an act. It was a real thing. She also had a personality that didn't talk, but if she was threatened, that personality would come to the fore and it would kill you if it felt threatened enough, which is how she ended up in the psych ward.
Different strengths, different weaknesses, different likes, dislikes.
Different everything, different body language, different vocal tones, different facial expressions, the whole gambit. Now, this is the extreme. Those of us who are sitting here are maybe not quite that extreme. But I will tell you, back in the day, I learned a technique from a woman named Carol Erickson, who was a hypnotherapist, amongst other things. And she taught me a technique that she loved doing called the parts party. And her model was, and she got this from her dad, who was also a hypnotherapist. Her model was that different parts of a person could communicate with you and with each other if you were clever enough to get them talking.
I think we've talked about this in passing, or I have in passing.
Yeah. And if there was a problem going on with some behavior, you could get together as a conference of parts and work out a deal where you would change that behavior into a much better behavior that accomplished the outcome that the part that was doing the behavior was looking for. And sometimes you do this in dialogue. You know, you put the person's conscious mind in a trance and tell it, go away, go play in this pretty field over here. And then you talk to the rest of them. Sometimes you do it, you have to take a person deep enough that verbalizing is not a good idea, not a good thing. And you use what's called ideomotor response. Ideomotor response can mean anything that you can do consistently. Like that is an ideomotor response. If I go, hey, if you're the part I want to talk to, please do that again. And it goes, and I go, okay, let's set up a code, a simple yes and no. Do what you just did for yes. Do it if you understand me. And it goes, now do it once for no. Like that. And then you have a yes-no dialogue and you can dialogue with it.
So is this in the context of like
This is
a
in the context
facilitated-
of a deep trance that you
Yeah.
put somebody in. Yeah.
Okay.
Or sometimes you can do it when the person is completely conscious. And that's a lot of fun too, because they're looking at themselves going, why are you twitching? Quit that. And they're still doing whatever it is that they're doing. You know, a nod, a twitch, can be anything.
Yeah, I mean, my experience has been with basically what we would call self-hypnosis and
Yeah.
doing it that way. But for more therapeutic, you would probably want some kind of facilitation.
Yeah. Austin says it is fascinating to see, and he would know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if this is the case, what would happen if you started joining these pieces back together into a single immutable I? And there's various different ways to do this. In hypnosis, there's a thing called collapsing anchors. And that works like this. I say to Kyle, think of something, and you don't have to say anything or anything. Just think of some time when you felt some way that you didn't want to feel.
Okay.
And when she finds it, I just like touch her hand like this. Just like that. Go. And when I do that, watch your eyes. See that little bob there? That's because when I do this, it comes back. Yeah, just like that. That means I have that state anchored. Now I put that down and I pick up her other hand. God, things you have to put up with when you sit next to me.
I didn't sign up for guinea piggery tonight. All right.
So we have this hand here, and I'm going to let it float in the air like this. And I say, think of a resource that you have now within yourself that you could have really used back then. Something that you know now that you didn't know then. And if you did it and you had access to it, it would have made everything completely different. Just like that. Notice what that finger did there. So I anchor that there. When I do this, little head jerk there, like that. Sorry, dear. So we now have this, and we have this. And we have this. What happens if I do it both at the same time? Y'all catch little eye twitches and everything? That's a moment of integration where the problem state meets the resource state. And you give her a moment to just let that settle through. And you will notice that now, if I do this, it's not the same. If I do this over here, you don't get the same physical response. Those two fragmented states have been introduced to each other. And ideally, from here on out, anytime she encounters the problem state, the resource state will also be there.
And I didn't have to share
Nothing.
any of the
I have
details.
no idea what this was about because I don't need to know.
Those remain private to me.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It's very powerful. And this is just the most superficial way possible to show it to you. I don't have time to take somebody and put them in the kind of state to really evoke these things
Yeah.
and make them incredibly deep.
I mean, it's surface
Yeah, it's
level.
very
I
surface.
didn't pick anything that was like, oh my God, I'm gonna burst into tears on camera, but I can see the metaphor of those two things meeting. I can say that there was some kind of interweaving between them.
Yeah. And a neurologist would say she just built new pathways in her brain. New neural pathways firing, going, oh, look, there's a connection here where there wasn't before. This is all very superficial. What if you could reconnect up every single part of yourself in a way that released the mechanical part and kept the conscious part? Because every part of you, using this model, and remember, it's a model, it's not objective reality. It's just a model of talking about this.
Trying to find ways to describe these phenomena.
But every part of you, every subpersonality requires a tiny piece of your consciousness. And that means that the part of you that you call I at any given time does not have access to all of the rest of that consciousness. You see how that might be a problem?
I have experienced that to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think so far before we go any further? Show of hands, am I full of shit?
Yeah. I didn't want to be mean, so I didn't.
Yeah, you could be mean. I'll put my own hand up. Doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Yeah.
In the grand absolute sense, you're full of shit. All words are full of shit. But this is fascinating stuff to me. No, we can't go into all that much detail in a 1 hour Zoom call, but if you ever decide to do a online course with it, whatever, I'll sign up. Just, you got my full support, put it that way.
Cool. I may actually have been thinking about that. Hypnosis for the modern Sufi, you know?
Do it, please.
Yeah.
You know, this is sort of a full circle moment for me
Is it?
because, yeah, right before I got into Gurdjieff and the work, I was reading someone called Samael Envoyar. He's a Gnostic teacher born in Colombia. And I read his book, the revolutionary psychology, the tree of the revolutionary psychology, something like that. And he's describing, it's the first time I heard this multiple person, the multiple eyes. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is parts therapy. Like, this is it just laid out in just different words. And absolutely, absolutely. I see this all the time with my clients. You know, we have this part of us that wants to lose weight, and then the part of us that just, you know, it's just, I don't know if I want to give up donuts. And so you have these two parts meet, and a lot of time it's interesting. You actually meet them in a conference room. They could be in their room with their eyes closed. They have to be in trance. It could be wherever they want. But there's this actual dialogue between these two parts, and I have them speak on one part, take a breath, and then speak on the other part as if they're just switching, and it's as it's happening. And that's why I commented. It's just so fascinating. So even if you didn't have the parts therapy model, if you were to just observe yourself, you would see, you know, the first thing you mentioned, you know, 1 hour ago you're one person, you're not that same person now. And it happens constantly. And obviously the more mechanical, I wouldn't say the worse it is, but the worse off you are at catching it. So yeah, I 100% agree with this for sure.
Yeah, I thought of you when I was working on this topic, and I thought Austin would like this. So I'm exceptionally pleased you showed up tonight.
Yeah, I mean, makes 100% sense for sure.
So the work, whether you're a Gurdjieffian or you're a dervish, doesn't matter. The work is in part unifying the I. And Gurdjieff talked about it in one way. We talk about it in a different way, talking about the stations of the Nafs. Nafs being the mechanical part of you, starting with the Nafs al-Amara, which is the commanding self, the commanding ego, which is all of these different eyes that pop around from one to another to another. And all want something. Every small I wants something.
They all have some goal.
Yeah, they have an outcome that they desire. And they will be monomaniacal in that outcome for the most part, which is why they're always fighting for a place in the driver's seat. And again, this is just a model. It's not real. It's a way of talking about something that we don't really have words to talk about. So, what do you do with this? How do you begin to take all of these eyes and reintegrating them? Another multiple I worked with back a long time ago said for him, it was like, here's this mirror, and he could see himself in the mirror, and somebody came along and smashed the mirror on the ground, and there were a million different pieces. And there was a piece of him in each of the fragments of the mirror, which was great because we could use that as a metaphor for gluing the mirror back together again. And that's, for me, that's what it's more like that. And when I think about it than anything else, it's gluing all of the parts back together. Every part that has been fragmented off of you by some shock or trauma or life event, or just natural unconsciousness.
There's a lot in here.
Yeah. So how to get that back to, it's just me.
To coherence, I guess. I
Yeah,
would
coherence is a really good word.
Yeah.
We're looking for conscious coherence.
Because you're not really dumbing it down. You're not really
No.
shutting up parts of yourself per se. You know, it's coherence.
So
Did you have a thought, Ian?
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to take it off at too much of a tangent, but one of the things, because of my background, the way I tend to think of these things, or at least parts of them, is I think of them as different parts of an operating system in the brain.
yeah, that's not invalid. That's a very useful model, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, I was really just focusing on the idea that that is kind of a different way of modeling it that works well for me just because I have experience with operating systems.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it would work for somebody who didn't have that experience.
Well, you would have to give them the experience of what it's like to use an operating system or to write an operating system, which is even more interesting. and to
Well,
experience things like strange loops in your operating system.
yeah, I used to work on operating systems many decades ago. So,
Yeah, so for you, that would be the perfect metaphor. Help you understand it. You got random pieces of code floating around there that maybe do something interesting when they somehow accidentally get called, but are not exactly what you want. I have a friend who's dealing with that now. She works in autonomous vehicles, and
oh,
yeah,
yeah,
their
that would be
operating
a very,
system.
I was going to say that would be a great example. Yes.
Yeah,
There's a lot of incoherence there.
yeah, the operating systems that they're using have so much trash in them. It's frightening. At this point, I would never get in an autonomous car and let it drive me around.
No, we're in agreement on that.
Yeah,
I mean, they are driving in our streets and we get to hear all the bad things that happen on the local news. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's because their operating systems are modeled upon the way our brains work before we fix them, when it comes right down to it. So,
We have an interesting thought from Adrian. I think that's who said it.
let's see.
We have a couple things. I didn't see all of it.
Bud says,
He sent us.
this is from a poet. His wife, Teal, is an amazing poet. She is one of the best contemporary poets I know. Don't tell her I said that because she'll get all embarrassed, but that's from her blog. And it is, let me pull it up. Yeah, go read it. Read all of Teal's poetry.
Perhaps we can share it in the description
Yeah, I'll put the link
so
in the
that other people
description.
can see it.
Yeah,
It's a
Yeah,
bit tough to read, but it's beautiful.
yeah,
yeah, just a quick glance at it. It looks fascinating.
It's a poem called 1000 Pieces.
yeah, yeah. When I say that she's one of the most incredible poets of our time, that's not hyperbole. That's actual truth.
And as a note, every poem that she writes, she considers devotional prayer.
Yeah, and it reads like that.
Yeah. So we can read it with that in mind. Adrian says, incredible how fast the spot passes from one fragment to another. The spotlight of attention. Yeah. It is. Yes. I mean,
yeah, it can happen in instants.
Fractions of a second.
I found very interesting the video. I'm watching all your videos, by the way. There's one about the trance that is, well, at least it resonated to me that that particular thing as being the trance, one of the mechanisms of jumping from one of those faces to another,
Yeah,
or masks or whatever.
yeah, you are not wrong. It is one of the mechanisms for doing that. So we've described the problem. What is the cure? We now know what the illness is. What is the cure? Oh, come on, guys. I was hoping that you would tell me.
James has something to offer.
Okay.
Well, if the problem is, the spotlight that jumps so quickly is a spotlight of exclusion. I am this now and not that. But now I'm this now and not that. It's a constant manufacturing of little subselves. It's like the program that manufactures all the little subselves. Would that be fair? That's kind of the process that's constantly shaving off little eyes. Is this
It could
notion that
very well be. It could very well be.
so
But some of those eyes become habitual.
yes, yes, and it starts to loop around, and it's like these established loops that replay and replay when the right stimulus is hit. So the practices of attention that frustrate that habit, break it, expose it, or turn it into something broader that's not so exclusionary. Like, I don't know if I'm making sense here. And
Don't
Mushtaq,
worry,
you want
nobody actually makes sense talking about this, least of all me. So,
okay, but that's to my mind where it has to start. Some kind of awareness practice that frustrates that process, exposes that process, or actually expands that process from something robotic into something broader. And so it's the awareness practices. When this stuff happens, instead of doing your habitual reaction, you stop and broaden the awareness beyond the little identification that's happening at that moment. Something along those lines.
yeah, you ain't wrong.
Good.
There are various different ways to do it, and they all involve some form of that or to other.
Mm.
Thanks, Jim.
That was Todd, I think.
yeah.
Okay,
It-
Todd,
it-
then Austin has something he wants to share too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the first thing that comes to mind is John Brunner's wonderful book, The Traveler in Black, where the protagonist is trying to he said of him, he has many names but one nature, and that is the goal for that is the goal for a coherent and well running universe. But this just brings that whole book there, and it's a wonderful book. But the thing that I find, and I'm not sure if it's a healthy thing or an unhealthy thing, but sometimes it's a necessary thing, is cultivating these facets of myself for special purposes. The part that deals with emergencies, find the problem, solve the problem, is not one that I want to have around for social purposes, and the one that helps defend me from past trauma is definitely it saved my life many times, but it's not one that I want to let out except on a short leash.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that you have to consider in handling parts. Every part has a job that it's supposed to do. And part of doing parts therapy is making sure that either the part knows to do the job only when it needs to do the job, or it's forgotten what job it's supposed to do. It just knows the behavior. So you give it a new job and a new behavior, or any number of things like this. There is something beyond that. And that's what we're interested in. And Osama, wait a second till we get to
Yeah, we've got
Adrian.
Austin,
Austin.
Ed, and then Osama.
Yeah, Austin, Ed, and Osama.
And thank you, Todd. You brought up some
Something
salient
very
points.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Austin. Yes.
I mean, what's kind of been working for me is observing these eyes requires very brutal honesty with yourself.
Oh, yes.
Because a lot of these I say parts, but a lot of these eyes are things that at first it could bring up a lot of shame. Like for me, I was after our talk, I started investigating this sort of pain that I had in my body, and there's guilt there, there's anger there, and I'm like, why? Like, what's that about? And it's interesting how sometimes these parts will, and I'm not sure if I got this from childhood. I mean, we were punished a lot, so it's like this idea of self-punishment, and so realizing that the guilt serves as self-punishment, and then you ask, well, why are you punishing me? Oh, so you never do that again. the anger. Why am I so angry? Oh, it's just to remind you not to commit so and so again, or not to just fall for these traps. And so one of the things that's helped me, and I'm still not as, I mean, it requires a lot of practice. Obviously, a very sharp attention and awareness, brutal honesty, and catching these things on the spot. Unfortunately, for me at least, I have to be put in situations where I know I'm not me, in sense where I know I'm not this like central, this like center of gravity where I'm being pulled in different directions, be it with a family member, be it with a coworker, where I'm just seeing how even my posture changes, my tone of voice changes, the way that I articulate things changes. Um, I think it just requires really paying attention and obviously kind of going head first into these things. It's kind of the way that I learned. Trance has helped me a lot. I do a lot of self-hypnosis on myself, and that's how I kind of figure these things out. Yet still, as I mentioned, like when you come face to face with these things, it's it sucks. There's just no other way to put it, but it's necessary because in thoroughly understanding them, then you can say, well, okay, like Mushtaq just said, all of these eyes have a job and they don't want to go away. They like anger doesn't want to stop playing the role of anger, or guilt doesn't want to stop playing the role of guilt, or self-sabotage, or whatever eye it is. So it's really like, all right, understanding these things. Sometimes, using the help of somebody is really helpful, and then sometimes you can figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, my long sigh there was me thinking about a couple sessions I did with myself where I set up 3 chairs and I was hopping from chair to chair as 3 different parts of myself. And I allowed myself to fully inhabit each part. Like I noticed that my posture would change as I was having each part discuss where they were at, what they were wanting, what they were feeling and experiencing, especially in relation to the other 2 parts. And their posture would change. The way that they used their voice would change. I allowed myself to do this out loud in privacy, of course. And the things that came up were pretty stunning. Like I learned about certain things about why behaviors were happening that I was experiencing as unhelpful and hurtful. And I realized that they were being done with the intention of helping. And, I hadn't read that in a book or anything. That's just what naturally came up over the course of the conversation. But it required me to be blunt, as you were saying, Austin, and to really be open-minded and to ask questions, to be curious, and also accepting.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned curiosity. I think that is an exceptional trait to have. This is self-inquiry at its best, and you have to be curious about these different eyes and how they manifest. And of course, they have their own ways. I'd say they're somewhat like coping mechanisms, and the
Yeah.
way that they learn to cope is not as healthy as we want them to be. And so if we can have that honesty with ourselves, then we can make progress with them. And I didn't understand that idea. Uspensky talks about it a lot. Like you have to understand these eyes, and it's like how? What do you mean understand them? Like, and no, it's having that mental conversation because again, they're gonna come up whether you want them to or not. And so better to understand them as
That's
they
a
do.
really good point.
Yeah.
That it's going to come up whether you want it to or not.
Yes. And if you do not understand them, you can't have compassion for them.
Yes.
And you cannot rejoin that eye to the whole without compassion.
So glad you brought that up.
because that's essential.
That's what I was going to say too,
Yeah.
is that without that piece, you're just beating yourself up all over again.
Yeah.
And just a lot, like the last thing, it is Easter Sunday. And so one of the things that comes up for me today, I'm not very religious, but obviously like the idea of forgive them for they know not what they do. And so can you say that to yourself in these eyes that are doing what they know, but they don't really know, you know?
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Osama,
Ed.
Ed, sorry, Osama, be patient.
Hey,
Thanks.
hey, watch it now. Okay. All right. Very interesting. What about I think the first thing to do is to become aware of each individual I under varying circumstances. And then once you become aware of them, just observe them over a period of time until they no longer have power over oneself. In other words, watch them over a period of time until their energy, their thought patterns, or whatever it is drop. That's all.
Yeah. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. We think we have a more efficient way than that, which I will get to after we have talked with Osama, who has been waiting with much savor.
I think, I mean, you guys touched on it, between Austin and what you guys comment on it. And I don't know if it's, these past few weeks or maybe a couple of months now that I've been sitting in, or I guess swimming in the name of Ar-Rahman, the beloved. And this topic reminded me of this quote that you shared once, Mushtaq, talking about from Khalil Gibran, Jesus, the Son of Man, when Mary Magdalene described him as, it seemed like every part of him loved every other part.
Such a good point.
And this is kind of this, compassion or love after this brutal self-analysis or honesty, manifesting al-haq, the truth, or invoking al-haq in that self-analysis, that truth. And at the same time, being under or in the beloved, Ar-Rahman, in doing that. Having that love be the glue that glues all these pieces of the mirror together, after acknowledging that they're there, they exist, they've done their job, what they need to do. I see you, I acknowledge you. And whatever healing looks like in healing that part, in whatever ways, because sometimes it's not just acknowledging, but it might take a different form of healing, whatever that is. And then love. Having that every part love every other part. Like once you shared that quote, I've been sitting in that. It's just so powerful.
Yeah. It's like an arrow that shoots you right in the heart.
It does.
Yeah. Yes. That's all.
Yeah, I remember the first time I read that particular chapter in his book. I didn't even know he had written that book. I found it in a used bookstore. I found a lot of good things in used bookstores. I was reading through it, opened it at random, And I think I stood there for 15 minutes with my jaw hanging open after reading that, because it was just so amazingly to the point. And so now this gets us very nicely to what do you do to begin reintegration? And Ed is not wrong. You have to pay attention and you have to observe these parts, but you have to find yourself first. I'm going to go back to the first 4 lines of the Yoga Sutras, which contains the entirety of the book in those first 4 lines. If you understood those first 4 lines, you wouldn't need to read anything else. And it goes, this, most happily, is the teachings of yoga. Yoga is the cessation of the twistings and turning of the cognitive mind. When the mind ceases from its spinning, the seer can come to its proper place as witness to the universe. At all other times, the seer is identified with the objects given to seeing. That's it. So if you want to reintegrate, you have to become that seer. Svarupa, I think is the word. You have to be the witness, the aware being. And it's simple to do. Not necessarily easy, but it's simple. It goes like this, and I want you all to do this with me.
All right, everybody.
Everybody, this is fun. You're going to have fun. Are you ready to have fun? I want to have fun. Take a breath. And just be aware of your breath right now. Don't do anything with it. Just be aware of it as it comes in and as it goes out. Feel your breath. Now, find your own awareness inside yourself. Find what is there when you let the words stop, when you let the pictures stop, when you let the feelings stop. Find what is there and realize that what is there is you. That is I. I am there. For lack of a better word, I doesn't even do it justice, but it's there. This is that which can have compassion for, can love, and can integrate each of the parts of you. Now, I want you to imagine that there is some part of you that is really tired of being separate from you. This is kind of a metaphor for man and God, or woman and God, or whoever in God. We long to end that separation. Each of these parts of you, I would like to suggest to you, longs to end the separation. So if you can let some part of yourself that has been in charge of some behavior just to come to the fore, so that you, as the silence inside yourself, can witness it. And when you witness it, what you have to do is make it a promise. The promise is that you will do whatever it has been doing to protect you in whatever way that it does. You will protect yourself. And so it doesn't have to anymore. And then invite it in. Let it step inside of you. Let it step inside of that quiet space. And you'll notice that a bunch of stuff will fall off. It's weird how this happens. It crashes out around it. That's all of the behaviors it doesn't need anymore. And you'll notice when it does step inside of you that it's you. It's always been you. It's never not been you. You have been pretending to be out there being other than you. And just let you absorb into you and witness the fact that you can take care of yourself now. You don't need to create a part to do it for you randomly. And when you can feel that integration, take a breath. And welcome yourself back home. Now, this is, again, very, very simple. You can all come back now. It's okay. Come on back. Open your eyes, look around. Listen to the sound of my voice. Or don't listen to the sound of my voice.
Reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a hypnotist, you know that one of the more fun things to do is to walk into a crowd of people who expect you to hypnotize them and say to them, whatever you do, don't listen to the sound of my voice, because I'm a hypnotist. And if you listen to my voice, you'll go into trance. So don't listen. And then you just go from there.
Pesky.
Yeah.
So, do you think people need to do this more than once?
Not if they really do it.
Yeah.
Not if that part of them is really ready to let go. Now, getting them ready to let go is the work. And that's where self-observation comes in. That's where self-remembering comes in. What we're doing here is more along the line of self-witnessing.
So it's simple.
It's simple, but it's not
as
easy.
we're always saying.
Yeah, I had you do this the easiest possible way. And a lot of parts are not ready to reintegrate. It's your job to get them ready.
Yeah. So if you found yourself resistant in that exercise,
You weren't working with the right part.
yeah, and that's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, this is skill building time.
Yeah.
Learning
why-
something new, perhaps.
Yeah, that's why I told you find a part that's willing and ready to let go. Because this is a metaphor for you surrendering to the divine reality, to the one being. For all of your parts, you are the one being. You just have to know it and be there and be the kind of Rahman that the divine reality gives to us in every moment. We have to give to all of these parts of ourselves if we want to draw them back into us. If we hate them, they will not come. If we are disgusted by them, they will not come. If we're afraid of them, they will not come. We must have that mercy and compassion for them. This is one of the ultimate secrets of the Quran. Every chapter of the Quran, save one, starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, or by the name of Allah, or by Allah, who is mercy, not who has mercy, who is mercy, who is compassion. And the one chapter that doesn't have that, God was really pissed when he wrote it. So the Christians back in the old days had the saying, put on the perfect man. The perfect man, the insan ikama, is the reflection of the divine unity. Does this sound like totally weird? Because it is totally weird. And it's all metaphor.
Any thoughts or questions?
Or answers.
We've had some good answers.
We've had some good answers. We draw a good crowd. Don't let it go to your heads, guys, but you're all brilliant.
Ed, did you have something you wanted to share? or
Well,
taught?
I earlier today, I think the whole key here is being able to have that witness or that ability to observe in constant motion in many different situations. And earlier today, I noticed that I was beginning to feel hurt, and and I had to ask myself the question is, who is this being hurt? And once I got in contact with who was being hurt by inaction, something that I had put out there and I was expecting to receive, but I didn't receive the response that I wanted. Once I asked myself, who is this is being hurt, and became aware of that part, the hurt dropped. And that sense of expansion just came back again. Because for a moment, or for those moments in which the hurt was there was a sense of contraction. I could feel it in my body. I can feel and identify what emotion it was, which was hurt. And once I saw all of this, it just all dropped. And that feeling of oneness started to emerge back again.
Thank you for sharing that, Ed.
So Ibrahim has had his hand raised.
Well, Ian and
Ibrahim came first.
Yeah, okay.
So Ibrahim, what's on your mind?
You're on mute.
And now I'm on unmute. There we go.
There you go. Yes.
So a lot of things actually, at first, maybe 15 or 20 minutes prior to this, I had a bunch of questions which almost ceased to dissolve in this sense. And those questions were hearing terms like when you find a way to attach all these eyes, or when you recognize the self and self-witness, self-remembrance, the first questions that kind of come up to my mind instantaneously, which dissolve now, are what is the self? What is I? Who is the you and who is the I? What are these things that are actually happening? What is the circuitry? And then through that exercise, I'll call it an exercise for a meditative practice, the theme that kind of came up for me is maturity. Many times in my life, if I'm going to use movement, somatic work, exercise, and things of that nature as an example, if I attempt to do things as I once did them years, eons ago, and try to replicate that now, there's almost this lack of maturity in seeing where I'm at now in this continuum of growth. And during that exercise, what came up for me, what I noted was, for if I only wish to be, I shall not. For if I surrender to endless becoming, I shall. And hearing that sense of oneness and unity, it almost sounds like this continuum and not an arc. And I think when I bear witness to that continuum, it's not as if all these things relinquish control or fall apart. It's bearing witness to something as infinite as the numbers. I know there's infinite numbers, but I'm not fixed on all the numbers that are out there. I understand, I can comprehend that with a sliver of a peanut, but I understand that. So by bearing witness to this continuum, there is this level of sensitivity to it, and it almost feels like a kernel of maturity. And that's what I think has been coming up for me and absolutely difficult in many moments for myself in life, but it's certainly something that evoked through this conversation with all of you all. So yeah, thank you. That's what came up.
Perfect. Could not ask for better. Yeah, I could. Ian, give us even better.
Thanks, Ibrahim.
Thank you. Yes.
I don't know whether this will be
Yeah, the pressure's
blown
on.
up, but it seems to me that with all of these exercises that you have us do, there's something in the way my brain works that makes it very difficult to actually do it.
Yeah, I actually picked
in
exercises I know are going to be hard for you.
Sort of in real time. But I did want to say that I have had at least a couple of experiences of this in the past. And one I think I mentioned quite a while back was, and this was specifically back in 1996. I mean, I know this for a fact, was when I was able to let go of a great deal of the resentment that I had towards my parents. And part of what went on at the time was I was suddenly able to see that the hate or the resentment was only hurting me. And then I was able to let go of it, and it was just wonderful. There's still a couple of, well, one particular incident that I haven't been able to resolve, but there was a whole lot of stuff that just totally fell away, and it was just great. So I know that the basic idea works, even if I can't do it in real time.
It may be worth doing it on your time when you have the time to not rush it, to delve into what's really floating to the top for you personally.
Yeah, during that time when this happened, I had been doing a lot of very, very, very deep work for a long time, with quite amazing results all around. But there's one other thing I think it's worth bringing up in relation to where I'm at, because of things that I was reminded of during this evening's talk, which was that I've got maybe a couple of different things that I know that just sort of spring out of nowhere when they're triggered, but they only happen very, very, very occasionally. And in my current lifestyle, I don't have anything around me that is even remotely likely to trigger any of those. One is kind of when I get in a situation where people are not listening to me, I can be patient for actually quite a really long time. But when it finally breaks, I kind of go ballistic, verbally, not physically, but I'm not a physical person. I don't hit people, but verbally. And that has happened on quite a number of occasions during my life in different circumstances. And I've got another one where if I get surprised by something in certain situations, it's almost like something else takes over and says, no, don't do it. Like somebody can suggest that I do something that actually maybe I would really like to do, but if it surprises me in a certain way, there's just this no reaction that seems to just come from a different place. I feel it in a different place in my body. It's very strange. But I was trying to see if I could bring either of those up while we were doing this exercise, and I couldn't get close to finding them. So that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, how do we find, I mean, I don't know if this is always the case, but these behaviors that we do that sometimes catch us by surprise.
Self-observation.
Yeah, I mean, how do
That's
we
how
know
you find them.
what part they might be attached to, for example?
They're attached to the part that does the behavior. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you find it through self-observation. That's why self-observation becomes the first practice.
Mhm.
You need to have a self in order to observe. And so it does dual duty there. Find yourself, observe your behavior.
Yeah.
Every behavior can be modeled as if it were a part of you that does that behavior.
Yeah.
Not saying real, saying as if.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is about pattern recognition, right? This is a little different from, you know, having a emotion arise and you give it attention for a while. And this is like what Ed was describing, which is valid. You know, you give attention to it.
And then
You're
goes
like,
away.
why am I hung up on this? Okay, I have
Yeah.
resolved this. I let it go now. This is something that's sticky, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Austin.
I'd also, two things. Something I do a lot with my clients, and this will help Ian. You know, whenever you're ready, kind of just think about the last time that you lashed out like that, and just really sit in that, and really recall as much as you can. And two things will happen, right? You'll go right into that state, or you'll feel something in your body. Either way, those two routes is going to give you that opportunity to kind of just integrate that into or not integrate that. I don't want to look for a solution, because it's better if you just like sit there and just give it awareness and attention. Usually that helps to solve it. And the second thing, yeah, just like re-emphasizing, echoing the importance of not all of these parts are going to be ready to just come in and just come back home, as we would like to say.
Yeah.
These things really do, these things kind of, there's so many facets to them. It's important to give it time and sort of nourish it in some interesting way, like really nourish these parts, because for me at least, I had a few days ago, I was like, man, it's like these eyes are like little kids, and I had a dream that night where I despise the school setting. So it's so funny that I was in a school and I was with teachers. And for me, the way I'm interpreting it, like there's three teachers. These are these higher eyes, and then all these little kids, and they just go completely rebellious, tie us up, and we were trying to escape. I get very vivid dreams, and I wake up and I'm just like, these eyes are, these little kids are just out of control sometimes, but it is what it is. And I had a session with one of my mentors, and one of my inner childs or inner children, we put on this like monk robe, and every time I think of this, I'm just like, oh, all right, this is like the good well behaved eyes. This is a very attentive and very kind. And so yeah, just echoing that it takes time for sure, a lot of compassion as well.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, what he said.
Okay. Ed and then Maria. Yeah.
Yeah, this is along the line of kind of relating to what Ian was stated. I think that for me, what I do is place myself in those circumstances in which I know certain triggers are going to happen. And I do them as much and as often as I possibly can. But I think that if a person is going to do that, they must be strong enough in order to witness what's going on.
Absolutely. Otherwise, they're just going to get lost in it again.
And get all screwed up, you know.
Yep. And we
One-
see that plenty of places.
Yeah.
People who get you to relive your traumas over and over and over again until your trauma is so burned into your neurology that you ain't likely ever to get it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we're talking about ain't that.
Yeah, the people I'm thinking of who were most likely to trigger that have both died quite a few years ago. So as I said, I'm not in a environment right now where there's much likelihood of
Yeah, you have to
triggers
like study
operating.
necromancy or something to deal with it in a direct way.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And you don't meet the best people. And most of the people you do meet. So,
Yeah, I'm not going there.
but the one thing, let's get Maria in here and then I will wrap this up with something profound or ridiculous or both.
Wow.
Yeah, so sorry for my voice. I've been sick lately. What Austin and Ed seem to be talking about is building capacity. Building a capacity to hold really intense sensations or impulses, energies, triggers, and I find that it's a bit of a dance. Sometimes I lose it. Other times I have the wherewithal to essentially call my energy back to myself and become a container for it. And most recently, I've been experiencing that with the energy of seeking approval from others and noticing how I leak so much energy in that dynamic. And so when I am now becoming more and more able to catch myself and witness this, I bring that back into myself and observe, what does this energy now feel like doing? What is the impulse? And I'm finding that the capacity just grows the more that we practice. So then I'm finding that more intense energies are coming up, like the energy of Eros energy, which is extremely powerful. And that just happened a couple of weeks ago. So my experience is that the more that I practice this, the more capacity, the more congruent I'm able to become, and the stronger I am to hold it all together and to sort of not lose my shit. So that was about it.
I think that makes perfect sense, Maria. And it actually crossed my mind towards like the middle of the conversation that one thing that we often touch on is that there is some degree of plugging the leaks and making sure we do have the capacity to do this work involved. But we talk about building that foundation often. And if a person finds this level of work difficult, it may be that it's just back to basics. It's about building up that foundation to have the energy to do this kind of integration stuff and build this coherence. So thank you for bringing that up, Maria. And I'm glad that you're feeling some growth in that area. That's wonderful to hear.
Any other thoughts? Everybody's so quiet.
People have been quite chatty, but yeah, does anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet feel like they might have something they want to?
Yeah, I was just gonna drop in with something that I had thought of saying earlier and then forgot, which is that I have a vague recollection, which really only popped up sometime this week, that in Uspensky, one of the techniques I think was talked about was calling these things by your name instead of I. So it would be like Far Brother did this or is doing this. As I said, it's a very vague recollection.
Yeah, it's there though. We were actually talking about that. I think, was that today we were talking about that? The idea of giving up talking about yourself as I.
I don't think that was today, but
Yeah.
we've talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that it's just something that popped up in my mind
Yeah.
Several days ago and is appropriate to this talk. So it goes.
Yeah. So here's a thought for you. What you have to do with all of your fragmented eyes is what God is doing with you. Just like you invite any eye that is ready to give up a meaningless position and return to the one, so is God. And just as many of your parts are not ready to do that, so is humans. And Munib was waving his hand. Did you have a thought?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that exact same thing. I mean, logically it makes sense, but yeah, I was just thinking how I would put it into practice. And a lot of like I watched Fight Club quite a lot of times, and there's this character who has split
Yeah,
personalities
Tyler
almost.
Durden
Yeah,
and the other guy. Yeah, I'm familiar with the story.
yeah, and sometimes if you repress the parts, they just come out unconsciously. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had that similar experience of sorts. So yeah.
Yeah. So again, the answer is that you have to develop compassion for all of these parts. Without that, nothing happens. Because if you hate a part, why would it want to have anything to do with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes if you get attached to a part too much, then you don't have space for other parts, right?
Yeah. And if you get attached to a part, you have to keep it separate.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. Could we share that quote from Khalil Gibran? Yes, give me a moment to find it, and I will actually read it to you.
It is in the forum.
Yeah, I'd like to read it though.
Oh, be my guest.
And that way I don't have to dig through the forum and find it.
His name's popping up there.
Yeah. There it is. So I'm finding the book in
Project
Gutenberg. And this is the 4th chapter of the book, called Mary Magdalene on Meeting Jesus for the First Time. And she writes, actually, would you like to read it? You read it. You have a much better voice for reading this.
It was in the month of June when I saw him for the first time. He was walking in the wheat field when I passed by with my handmaidens, and he was alone. The rhythm of his steps was different from other men's, and the movement of his body was like naught I had seen before. Men did not pace the earth in that manner, and even now I do not know whether he walked fast or slow. My handmaidens pointed their fingers at him and spoke in shy whispers to one another. And I stayed my steps for a moment and raised my hand to hail him. But he did not turn his face, and he did not look at me. And I hated him. I was swept back into myself, and I was cold, as if I had been in a snowdrift, and I shivered. That night I beheld him in my dreaming, and they told me afterward that I had screamed in my sleep and was restless upon my bed. It was in the month of August that I saw him again, through my window. He was sitting in the shadow of the cypress tree across my garden, and he was still, as if he had been carved out of stone, like the statues in Antioch and in the other cities of the North Country. And my slave, the Egyptian, came and said, "That man is here again. He's sitting there across your garden." And I gazed at him, and my soul quivered within me, for he was beautiful. His body was single, and each part seemed to love every other part. Then I clothed myself with raiment of Damascus, and I left my house and walked towards him. Was it my aloneness, or was it his fragrance that drew me to him? Was it a hunger in my eyes that desired comeliness, or was it his beauty that sought the light of my eyes? Even now, I do not know. I walked to him with my scented garments and my golden sandals, the sandals the Roman captain had given me, even these sandals. And when I reached him, I said, "Good morrow to you." And he said, "Good morrow to you, Miriam." And he looked at me, and his night eyes saw me as no man had seen me. And suddenly I was as if naked, and I was shy. Yet he had only said, "Good morrow to you." And I said to him then, "Will you not come to my house?" And he said, "Am I not already in your house?" I did not know what he meant, but I know now. And he said, "Will you not?" And I said, "Will you not have wine and bread with me?" And he said, "Yes, Miriam, but not now." "Not now, not now," he said. And the voice of the sea was in those words, and the voice of the wind and the trees. And when he said them unto me, life spoke to death. For mind you, my friend, I was dead. I was a woman who had divorced her soul. I was living apart from this self which you now see. I belonged to all men and to none. They called me harlot and a woman possessed of 7 devils. I was cursed and I was envied. But when his dawn eyes looked into my eyes, all the stars of my night faded away, and I became Miriam, only Miriam, a woman lost to the earth she had known and finding herself in new places. And now again I said to him, "Come into my house and share bread and wine with me." And he said, "Why do you bid me to be your guest?" And I said, "I beg you to come into my house." And it was all that was sought in me, and all that the sky and me calling unto him. And then he looked at me, and the noontide of his eyes was upon me, and he said, "You have many lovers, and yet I alone love you. Other men love themselves in your nearness. I love you in yourself. Other men see beauty in you that shall fade away sooner than their own years. But I see in you a beauty that shall not fade away. And in the autumn of your days, that beauty shall not be afraid to gaze at itself in the mirror, and it shall not be offended. I alone love the unseen in you. Then he said in a low voice, go away now. If this cypress tree is yours and you would not have me sit in its shadow, I will walk my way. And I cried to him and I said, Master, come into my house. I have incense to burn for you and a silver basin for your feet. You are a stranger and not a stranger at all. I entreat you, come to my house. Then he stood up and looked at me as if, even as the seasons might look down upon the field. And he smiled. And he said again, all men love you for themselves. I love you for yourself. And then he walked away. But no other man ever walked the way he walked. Was it a breath born in my garden that moved to the east? Or was it a storm that would shake all things to their foundations? I knew not. But on that day, the sunset of his eyes slew the dragon in me, and I became a woman. I became Miriam, Miriam of Mishto.
And that, my friends, is what Olegomenism is like.
I'm glad we all got to share that together.
And which book is this in again?
That's in a book by Khalil Gibran.
Khalil Gibran.
Ah.
Yes, called Jesus, Son of Man.
Hmm.
It's very good in its entirety. I think personally that little chapter is the crown of that book.
Beautiful.
And Alka has something to say. We are
Not
all
after
ears.
this. Not after this, Mustaq.
Okay.
I'll put it in the. I love you both.
Yeah. Love you too, Alka.
So, any last thoughts before we head off to whatever the hell we're doing?
To integrate?
To integrate, yes.
To integrate.
Well, everyone, I'm glad we got to hang out this evening. It's been lovely. Hopefully we can take some time this week to begin thinking about how we might put this domain of practice into action.
Yeah. Let's talk about it on the forum.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. And I guess we'll see you guys next week then. Take care.
If not before.
We can wave to each other. Wave to everybody on the replay. See you soon.
Bye.